Hi, this is Andrew Gumbs. I'm the editor-in-chief of Artificial Intelligence Surgery. This is our new episode of Artificial Intelligence and Cybersurgery. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Vincent Grasso, who's going to introduce our guest.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, Dr. Vincent Grasso here. I'm the social media and strategy director for our journal. You can find us at aisjournal.net. We're the only journal dedicated to surgery and artificial intelligence. We have the great pleasure and privilege of having our next guest on our podcast, Dr. Michael Friebe, and the very exciting work that you're doing offshore, and love to hear more about that. And please give us, tell us about your background and your relationship to Andrew, which I'm sure our audience is very interested in learning about. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me actually on this podcast. So quick one, I'm based in Germany. I have actually, a 30 plus year experience in developing devices. I'm an engineer, but I'm saying that I have an engineering background, and I know how to actually use technology to create tools and create new devices. And what I have done in the last few years is gotten, more and more into what we call exponential technology. So robotics, AI. Also I'm very interested in genetic therapies and actually thinking about these kind of things. So moving things from a current treatment diagnosing system more towards a prevention, home care based approach. But my main interest is actually in creating new startups and actually translating technology from a lab or from the bed from a bench side to a bed to really having patient access, or even before that, nobody wants to be a patient, right? Everybody wants to actually avoid, the status of a patient, to actually have technologies available that will help you actually monitor diseases early on, and maybe even get information about prevention. And this is my core interest. And I started about 35 companies in the last 30 years. And I have also quite a bit of patents, more or less useless, I have to say. Well, 100 patents, of which probably 97 are useless at the moment, at least. And now a quick one, because you asked about this, the connection to Andrew. Andrew, first of all, he's also connected to the University of Magdeburg, where I have an innovation lab. So that's one of the cool ones. He is also probably found out a little bit about some of the activities that I'm doing with respect to robotics and AI and sensors combined. So what we're trying to do is actually, create new sensors for surgeons that they don't have during the surgery, maybe even give information back to a surgeon that could be used for many other things, like having a tissue histology done, based on audio. So you don't have to take a sample anymore. Maybe you can actually do something else with it. So there's a lot of things where we have a connection. And I do believe, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but that it is also good to have some engineers and maybe some entrepreneurs on the editorial board. Because I think if you don't have an entrepreneurial mindset, then it will be very, very difficult to actually create technologies that will ever make it to the patient, will ever make it to a commercialization. And commercialization is something important in this
Well,
field.
That's exactly why we created the journal, is really, just being a medical student and doing medicine, those days are over, in my opinion. I mean, as you know, I'm applying to do a PhD in artificial intelligence. We have engineers on our boards, and like I even often ask the question, do surgery departments need to start having an artificial intelligence expert on staff, or an engineer on staff? And I mean, there are more and more departments that are smart enough to do this, but this is, there's a complete...
What you need to have an entrepreneur in residence on staff. I think that would almost be better. Yeah. And while I really appreciate it, and I have a lot of sympathy for you, and a lot of I think you're doing an awesome job if you really try to get a PhD in AI. I do not necessarily believe that it is necessary to have an AI in. You have a PhD in AI, but you need to know what the capabilities and the power of AI is.
For instance, I'm going to do the work anyway. So I figure while I'm doing the work, I might as well get a PhD. But I agree with you completely. It's purely for my personal pleasure, you know?
But
and that's the best way to do a PhD, I think, because absolutely. I never wanted to do a PhD before.
That's the driving force. And I say, again, I'm not trying to stop you from doing it. I think it's really cool that you do it, because then you're somebody who can argue from both ends. Yeah. On the other hand, just a quick one on I don't really know much about AI. I'm probably one of the technical professors who admits that I have PhD students that I supervise in AI, but I'm not an expert in AI by any means. Yeah. I know what the things do. I have actually programmed and a CNN before with PyTorch and all these other things that are needed for that, but I've forgotten it. But that's not that important. I think for me, it's important that I know what are the trigger points, what can I do to cluster things, how many levels do I need to have, what kind of questions do I need to ask, and basically stimulate the researchers to ask the same questions and to actually follow that up. Having a bias-free environment, making sure that the data input is good and that the data is properly defined and that is of good quality. All these kind of things, that's what you need to know. And then you need to understand what is possible with AI. But we need to have PhD students to do the AI, right? So at the end of the day, it's good that I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really, the principles is the hardest thing, but I think you're selling yourself short. I'm sure you have a very high level understanding of AI. I mean, you're using it left and right. I think you're just being very modest and humble. But also as an engineer,
well, I could not get a PhD in AI. Let's put it that way. So so you're probably right. I know more than most people, but I don't know enough to get a PhD. So maybe that's the differentiation. But I have seen, and that's why the question or the focus on AI is so important is that just a quick example, like 6 or 7 years ago, I supervised a PhD student at the Technical University in Munich. And it was a PhD topic on on image segmentation without AI. Yeah. And we actually had a master's students redo the work of that PhD student who took 4.5 years to get it done. Yeah. And it was done in less than a master thesis time. And wow. It was with better results with AI. Wow. So you see how fast the times are moving, and things simply don't work without any AI anymore. So there's a lot of things where people say, I'm doing AI. And the answer should be today, well, if you don't use AI, you do something wrong. I mean, AI is kind of like a commodity. It's part of it, and it should be part of it because it simply is better and does things that you could not imagine beforehand. So if you don't do AI, you are, I think, doing something completely wrong.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree more with that. So I'm hearing some birds chirping. Where you're in Germany right now?
Well, I'm sitting in my garden, but you can't see the garden because I'm trying to, even for this podcast, I'm trying to actually, get rid of the background. So you see the garden in the background. So I see
beautiful.
So this is the middle of Germany. So if people actually have a feeling that Germany is not green, you're wrong. It is pretty green. And if people think that Germany is cold, no, it's not cold. It's pretty warm at the moment.
Yes. So I met Michael for the first time in person in Hanover a few weeks ago. It was great. We had some very good beer and some wonderful pork.
Wow,
that was, at least I did. Fish. Yeah. And you also have appointments in other countries. I believe in Poland you have an appointment also.
Yeah, I have actually. I'm in all honesty, I'm not getting paid in Germany anymore. I still have this research lab. But maybe I'm allowed to say this. I'm quite frustrated with the academic setup because it is very much oriented towards incremental innovations. So it's like you know that, Andrew, from the AI world, you talk in terms of dice coefficients, right? So how much better can you do things with AI? And what you do is then you publish a paper that improved the dice coefficient from 89.4 to 91.7. And the question should be asked, who cares? What is the effect? What is the result for the patient? Does the patient benefit? Does the clinician benefit? Who cares on whether you do 2% more? So these questions are not, personally, I think, not relevant. There are incremental innovations. You should actually think about, I said that yesterday in a talk, is we should not continuously or only focus on improving existing medicine, traditional medicine. We should make sure that we use the tools that we have on our hands to create new medicine. Yeah. And new medicine is not improving traditional medicine. It is thinking, how can I use these technologies for creating a completely new information set? And how can I improve not only the treatments, but how can I avoid treatments? How can I, shift healthcare to a completely different level? And that is very, very difficult.
But this is,
and again, appreciate that to AI.
Yeah, no, but this is where I feel like we need more doctors with AI experience, with high level AI, because you can't conceive of the power of AI. I mean, we've been, I'm not going to say my age. That's how old I am. But I mean, more.
Andrew, I'm older, but that's okay. But it goes both ways. I'm coming from an engineering point of view, and I used to be part of a biomedical or medical technology environment. And medical technologists, biomedical engineers, typically do not ever see a patient, do not ever talk to a doctor before they're finished. What's the point of that? I mean, I don't get it. The same thing goes for the clinicians. The clinicians are expected to work with robots, are expected to work with AI, are expected to work with advanced sensorics and diagnostics. Who teaches that to them? Nobody.
Well, something happened with robots, which I think is terrible. Like, you didn't see this in industry. In industry, they started using cobots, right? Collaborative robots, because they use the benefit of the human and a little bit of robotics at the same time. We skipped that step and we went directly to this, this bazooka, of Danger Will Robinson. I don't know if you remember that reference, but that TV show Lost in Space from the 60s. We went to this huge robot and we skipped, handheld robotics. And it was because industry shoved it down our throats. And it's because of a lack of understanding of basic concepts that this happened. We talked earlier before we started recording about the Disruptive Technology Conference. And I loved what you said, and I wish I had it recorded. I just got back from a conference that was exclusively, essentially, American doctors, American companies, American engineers, American computer scientists, and it was a wonderful thing. And I wish the both of you could have come, but I liked your comment on that the democratization of all.
Maybe I can maybe I try to recollect what I said. But what is very dangerous is if you have a one-sided view. So if you basically sit around AI guys, you will always talk about AI, right? If you talk about clinicians, you will talk about clinical stuff. AI does not talk to clinicians. And if you talk only to Americans, you will only talk about the American perspective. You will talk about the business models of US, treating more means more money, blah, 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 all these things. But if you really look at it, the world is obviously significantly more than just the US or significantly more than just Europe. It is something where the Africans have no access to, not even an ultrasound scanner. So we need to make sure that, we democratize health so it is available to a lot of more people. I know that's against business models, and people always ask about business models. But the business model health and the incentivization system in health has to change. Not, treating people you get paid for, avoiding treatment you get paid for. I don't know how to do this. I mean, I don't have a solution for that either, but it needs to shift. And we need to actually get more empathy into the community for what happens outside our own little world. I mean, the Europeans and the Americans they're not significantly different with respect to healthcare set up. We all have pretty cool stuff around, but we still complain and we don't look left and right. And it's kind of sad to see that, and sad to see that we are so stuck in a system where the patient has no power, but the stakeholder, the hospital, the doctor, the equipment provider has pretty much the power to determine what's being developed next. Sad. The patient should determine.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, absolutely.
But they don't.
Absolutely.
So, but let me maybe do one more comment and to what you said before. You said the clinicians should be AI expert as well. I agree.
Not all, but
some of them. Yeah. But I see it. I see it from the engineering perspective. I see it exactly opposite. I said the engineer needs to be a little bit more like a clinician. They need to understand the patient problems. They need to empathize. They need to empathize with the clinical work. They need to empathize with, some of the setups around. They need to understand workflows. And that's also what we need to get down. We need to get the engineer into the practice, into the hospital, and we need to get some of the clinicians out into the technical field, because we don't talk the same language.
Yeah,
and
but,
we see
but
this
I think
all
more
the
engineers
time.
need to become doctors.
Yeah.
You know, I actually have my nephew who Vincent knows he's currently studying engineering, and he wants to be an orthopedic surgeon. And you know, if I could do it all over again, I would love to study engineering and go into medicine, or even better, artificial intelligence, and then go to medical school. You know, it's a very exciting time, I find.
But I think it would be, and I have suggested that one time, that we actually create an environment where we actually deal with problems. So we basically say we create an environment where we address diabetes. We only talk about so whatever. We need a biologist, we need a life science expert, we need an AI expert, we need some doctors, and put them together and say, now we create a solution for that. But this is not what's happening, right? We have a separation. We have these silos in the clinical field, and we have a silo in the engineering field, and they come together because they get some money and they have some grants together, you know, but not solving big issues and not addressing, you know, really having a big purpose. It's always this incremental stuff. It just bugs me a little bit that we think that way.
You know, that reminds me of Vincent's story. Vincent, tell Michael a little bit about you, because you're a surgeon, and you had a lot of these ideas decades ago, and it sounds like you were a little bit ahead of your time. So you can fill in Michael a little bit about that.
No, this is exciting, because you know, we're all speaking about things that are, you know, clear and dear to our hearts. You know, Michael, I had created about 8 years ago a 3-course master's program for healthcare providers, for doctors, and what it involved was some curriculum for doctors to learn what I would call the minimum feature set of technology, the language of technology, but also the language of business. So part of the problem in the United States is you could go to the best medical school and do the best residency in the world, and then you come out of that training and you have no business insights at all, because we don't learn business in medical school. We don't learn business in residency. So you have these highly trained people, then they go to a hospital, and they are not prepared to argue and discuss with the C-suite, the CFO, the COO, why things should change. They don't have that knowledge. So like Andrew just finished a master's in science with a focus on AI, you know, you don't have to get a master's, but you should have some proficiency in technology and business, so that you can talk to the engineers, talk to the finance people, be part of the conversation. So maybe Andrew, we can have a discussion about that. That's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome, because maybe we are actually living in parallel worlds and try to do the same thing. I had an idea for a master in health tech innovation design, and nice. Basically what I wanted to do with that is I wanted to combine clinical expertise with technical expertise with business expertise, because only these three together work. And the goal was that you actually, as a master thesis, you address a problem and you create a solution for that. And that solution has to be validated from a, when you think in terms of entrepreneurship, you always have to ask 3 questions. The first question is it desirable? Is it desirable? So desirability. Does anybody need it? Is it actually something that solves the problem? The second thing is it feasible? Can you do it? Is it something that technologically is possible? You can scale it. At least you have ideas of how to do it. And the third thing is it viable? So is there a business concept behind it? Desirability, feasibility, and viability. And only if these 3 things fit together, it is something that is actually will be successful. And none of this is being taught in engineering school. So now I'm talking about an engineer. None of that is being taught at the medical school. And now we go to the business guys. They don't learn about feasibility either. Yeah. So they don't know how to actually build it. So
it's a good opportunity, Andrew.
It's the blind leading the blind, leading the blind.
That's right.
This could be a cool addition to one of our programs that we're working on, to spearhead this, at least in a pilot, take some.
I think we should have we can do a massive online course or something like that, and then basically put teams together that then address a problem and come up with a solution. And there is something. And by the way, maybe I'm allowed to make a little advertisement. It's a podcast, right? I just wrote a book, and it's called The Future Health Innovation Design. And what part of that is actually a new concept. Is called the Purpose Launchpad Health. And Purpose Launchpad Health has 8 segments, and it starts with something that's called purpose. Why am I doing what am I doing? What is the big goal about this? And then it actually goes through these 8 segments. One is called the customer. So do I know my customer, what they really want? Then what is the process behind it? What is the product behind it? What is is there a viability behind it, et cetera, et cetera. And for all these, you have possibilities of actually checking, and you have a visual feedback later on of where you are and where you have deficiencies. And that is really cool, because if you don't have a method and nobody tells you where you should add knowledge and where you should invest more time, you will not come up with a good solution. The solution will be one-sided. It will be a cool medical solution that can be built or is not economically feasible. Or you will build something that no clinician needs. I mean, these are the kind of solutions that come out there, right?
So guys, this is fantastic. We actually have a lot more to talk about, but we only have 15 minutes, and I actually think the 3 of us need to take some stuff offline. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to end the podcast, but we're going to keep talking, okay?
Sure.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so let's see here.